Hey everybody, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and you're going to see on the screen two different plugins, an older version and a newer version of a plugin from Baby Audio, the IHNY-2 plugin. This is the original one over here on the left. It's actually Baby Audio's first plugin from about 3 years ago. And in celebration of their third birthday, they released an updated version of this, the IHNY-2, IHNY-2, over here on the right. And there's a lot more features in this one that we're going to take a dive into today. So let's first just talk about what this plugin does. It basically internally splits the signal into two parts. There's no extra routing required to set up parallel compression in this. And it basically all works on this XY pad right down here. So the controls, the basic controls, are really, really easy. On the vertical axis, up and down, we've got a balance of wet and dry on the XY pad when you move that center circle. And on the horizontal axis, we've got the amount of compression on the wet track. Simple as that. Just dial in as much or as little as you want of the wet-dry balance and the amount of compression on the XY pad. Really, really makes it easy to dial in settings without tweaking a bunch of different knobs. To make it even easier, there's an auto gain right here, and of course you can fine-tune that auto gain if you want to, and the overall output can be adjusted right down here. Resizable interface, which is always nice. And then we've got this tweak section right here. So if you really want to dive into the compression settings and tailor it to exactly what you want it to do, you can do so within this tweak section. We've got attack and release controls, and it's really cool kind of graphic representation of what's happening with the attack and release here, rather than just numerical values. In fact, all of this is really intuitive, rather than just dialing a dial to the exact numerical value you want. We've got ratio, of course. So the first two are really typical controls, attack, release, and ratio. This punch control is really useful because what this does is allow more of the transient to come through. Often with heavy compression, the transient gets so squashed that you really lose it. This allows you to dial some of that back in again. This harmonics control here is really saturation controlled by gain reduction. So more compression equals more saturation. Shape here is an EQ curve that emphasizes the highs and lows, our typical smiley face EQ. We've got a tilt filter here, which is really like an emphasis filter for the compressor. We can compress the highs or lows more or less, depending on which way we tilt it. And this low and high preserve is again like an emphasis filter, where we have cutoff frequencies above and below which we don't have compression. So if you have a drum part and you don't want the kick drum triggering too much compression, you allow that kick to just poke through by bringing up that low preserve value, and vice versa on the top end if you'd like. Got a couple other features here. Oversampling is available, 2 or 4 times oversampling. We've got a solo button right next to that where we can solo the output, which really makes this work like a typical compressor on an insert without the wet-dry control, or if you just want to dial in the exact compression sound you want and go back to your wet-dry control, you can do it there. As with all the other Baby Audio plugins, you can hit the logo, and that allows you to bypass the plugin. And that is pretty much it for the controls. So let's dive right in and hear this on a source. One of the most common uses of parallel compression is on drums. So we're going to listen to this on a drums bus. First thing I'm going to do is bypass the plugin. In fact, I'll use the logo to do it, so you can really tell it's bypass. And just hear the dry drum part without the parallel compression. Now I'll engage the plugin and just play with the XY slider until I get a nice parallel sound that I like. Then we'll tweak it a little bit down on the tweak panel. And I'll bypass it on and off as it plays. So obviously a big difference in the sound and really easy to dial in. We could go a little bit crazier, add a little bit more wet signal and a little bit more compression. but that's really over the top. I'd rather bring it down here. It's kind of like the sweet spot for me on this part. All right, so let's try it on a different source here. I've got a bass part here. I'm going to bypass the plugin first and just hear the bass part. And engage the plugin and dial in that parallel compression I want. I'm going to use the low preserve slider down here to kind of get that low end back in without triggering too much of the compression. If you push the harmonics really far, you get some nice saturation. And I'll bypass it on and off as it plays. So obviously this is not meant to be a subtle compressor. It's aggressive. But if you're going for that sort of modern aggressive sound, it's a great tool to get it. Okay, let's check it out on one last source here. This is going to be a keyboard bus. First, again, starting with the plugin bypassed. So that could definitely use some thickening up. Now I'll bypass it on and off as it plays. More of a subtle difference on this source, but it does thicken it up really nicely. So if you're looking for an aggressive, modern sound with your compression, not gentle compression, not level controlling compression, but attitude compressor, this is fantastic. A great parallel compression tool, and it's super easy to dial in. You don't really even need to know anything about compression in terms of how to set up a compressor to make this work. Just dial in the sound you like on the XY pad, and you are basically done. If you want to tweak it a little farther down here, really intuitive, simple controls to make that work as well. So highly recommended from Baby Audio IHNY-2 version 2. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, so we can keep you in the loop as to what's coming up next, and I'll see you in the next one.